Deadpool and Wolverine, the summer blockbuster everyone has been waiting for, and by far the most fun film of the year. It's almost as fun as leaving a like on the video. Also, spoilers. I had an absolute blast getting to see this film in theaters, and that seems to be the general consensus amongst fans. The review scores are generally pretty high, and it's made box office history by having the highest grossing opening weekend for an R-rated movie. That is just damn good stuff. I don't think anyone doubted this film would do well considering the MCU has a history of smashing the box office, and Deadpool has proven to be a success in the past. However, the MCU as a whole is in a weird place. In the past few years, the quality has gone back and forth quite a bit. And while I want to say there have been more highs than lows, the lows are steep. The question kind of going around has been whether or not Deadpool and Wolverine saved the MCU. This is a huge success for Marvel, so surely things are looking up, right? Well, no. It might be too soon to tell, but as of right now, the MCU still needs a lot of work. Deadpool has never really been much of the saving type anyway. Deadpool and Wolverine has a lot of great aspects to it. It feels like a respectful homage to comic book films of the past, while also being a giant parody of the MCU. This was a film made with a lot of heart. The performances are fantastic, the score was incredible, and I think the film did a pretty great job of justifying the return of Hugh Jackman to the role of Wolverine. He clearly didn't phone in his performance, and that's always great to see. Now, this might be the point where others start to disagree with me, but while Deadpool and Wolverine was a great time, and it's great to see Deadpool in the MCU, I think the film retains a lot of the flaws that more recent MCU outings have had. This is something I've talked about at length on the channel, but for the sake of this video, I feel the need to reiterate, the MCU has a character problem. More accurately, it has a spectacle versus character problem. The best MCU projects have been the ones that manage to find the balance between servicing the fans and interesting storytelling to keep us engaged. Even ones as recently as Loki Season 2 seem to get this right. But Marvel is more interested in getting butts in seats by feeding us with cameos, references, and callbacks over interesting storytelling. I mean, just look at the way they added Red Hulk to the end of that Captain America trailer. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds recently did an interview on Hot Ones to promote Deadpool and Wolverine, and Ryan had an interesting quote to say that I think very much applies to what I'm talking about. Some films that I've been on, they have a lot of money, and you kind of keep throwing money at a problem when your real problem is that you are focused on spectacle over character. When you focus on spectacle as opposed to character, audiences, I think, are a little inured to spectacle. I feel like the CGI effects and those kinds of things aren't what actually sustain an audience after a movie comes out. They in fact relate to and remember character moments. They remember a line or a moment more so than they will the Earth being in peril or something like that. Now, I find this funny that Ryan Reynolds said this in an interview to promote this film, when this is exactly the one major flaw that I would say Deadpool and Wolverine has. Now, I'm not saying the film ignores character completely, but maybe they brush it under the rug a little more than they should. The entire first act does a great job of setting everything up. Deadpool's midlife crisis, his retirement from being Deadpool, and his motivation to get back into the suit, as well as our introduction to this new Wolverine and how he came to be the way he is. I find that towards the middle chunk of the film, the plot does start to feel pretty thin. Deadpool and Wolverine at that point feels more interested in getting to the next fight scene, cameo, or whatever, as opposed to taking the time to build on the characters more. Once Elektra, Blade, Gambit, and X-23 enter the mix, the film starts to lose its way a bit. There's jokes, a big action scene with all the characters as a team, but it doesn't feel important to the overall plot. Wolverine gets a nice clean end to his arc, but it feels like the film speeds past it so we can get to the big third act sequence. Once we get to the fight with the Deadpool core, I feel like the stakes ultimately just don't exist, and the arcs of the characters just kinda get forgotten about. It quickly becomes a generic MacGuffin chasing good guy versus bad guy scenario, and honestly, that stuff is just kind of disappointing to me, especially since I found the previous Deadpools managed to weave the action with the arcs of the characters a bit better. Deadpool 1 and 2 are films I would say I rewatch on a pretty consistent basis, and while I love the humor and the action of the Deadpool movies, what really keeps me coming back is the characters. Deadpool 1 is a film with a pretty simple story told efficiently, allowing us to learn about and grow attached to the character of Deadpool. Every single scene had to work because they just didn't have the budget most other comic book films are able to work with. Deadpool 2 had a lot more money behind it, the action felt bigger, but the story was just as focused as the first one, especially focusing a lot on Deadpool's character, his grief, and also exploring more of his morals.
We have rules! You are not judge, jury, or executioner!
Fuck your rules! I fight for what's right, and sometimes you gotta fight dirty!
And even then, everybody in that film gets some kind of a journey. You have Cable with the teddy bear, and a great example I think is Domino. Just before the final battle, we learn that Domino grew up in the same orphanage that Russell is getting his revenge in. So ultimately, she gets to save the kids from experiencing the torture and shitty childhood that she had. It's a very surface level arc, and the character moment does kind of come out of the blue, but it makes her involvement in the story feel that much more important and her as a character more interesting. All this to say, Deadpool and Wolverine is still a fantastic watch. I just think it gets caught up in all the possibilities of having Deadpool in the MCU, that the filmmakers probably just said fuck it and focused on having as much fun as possible, which I totally commend them for. It's not my favorite Deadpool movie, and it's not my favorite MCU movie, but I fucking loved Deadpool and Wolverine. The MCU wasn't saved, but I do think that Marvel needs to reassess and see why audiences gravitated towards them in the first place. I'm not completely opposed to fan service, but it's always at its best when served alongside a compelling story. At the end of the day, this is a Marvel film made for fans. We finally got Wolverine in a comic-accurate suit, we have Deadpool in the MCU. Deadpool and Wolverine was made to be a nerd's wet dream, and that's all it needs to be. I can criticize and say negative things about the MCU all day, but realistically, I'm also the kind of fan who will be first in line to go see these films in theaters. I grew up with the MCU, and so it holds a special place in my heart. I only criticize out of love, and I think that should be your takeaway from this video. Let me know what you all thought down below. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know all of your thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. Let's start a discussion down below. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you all on the flippity flip. I love it. Others fall asleep during it. These films are not for everybody, nor should they be. It's understandable to be turned off by this kind of film. So I guess I can recommend at least giving it a try. I had no clue what Doom was when I sat down to watch part 1 in theaters, and I was pleasantly surprised back in 2020.